Sit down. Sit. Lay down. Lay down, girl. Hey guys, I had an interesting conversation tonight with Dave Feldman. I'm not going to get into too much of, but what we did talk about was um, just general stuff, fat, cholesterol, things like that. And getting to chat with him, it kind of opened up a little bit more of a different perspective on what um, cholesterol really means and how it affects your body. And I'm hoping to learn from him as time passes. So, right now, what I've done is I've pulled up his biography on here, or let's like not biography, but a little breakdown of him. And this is just the about portion of Dave Feldman. He's a senior software engineer and entrepreneur. He began a low carb, high fat diet April 2015 and have since learned everything that he possibly could about high fat, low carb diets, with special emphasis on cholesterol, given his lipid numbers spiked substantially after going on the diet. As an engineer, I spotted a pattern in the lipid system that's very similar to distributed objects in networks. You guys know that I myself take stuff that I learned in the mechanic field, such as that lazy oxygen sensor that I just showed you guys, where the oxygen sensor function on the computer basically was a straight line. It was barely fluctuating at all. It's not doing its job anymore. The oxygen sensor has become biased. And at that point, it's lazy and it's not telling the computer how much fuel and stuff is in the system. It's not helping regulate the function of the digestive tract and things like that. So, if information bias happens, then your vehicle can't function properly. In the same way with your body, it's not going to function properly. Um, so I pick up patterns of stuff in health that I can see related to things that I deal with in real life, and they make sense to me. And then I go back to the science portion of it, and I try to see whether or not that I'm correlating it correctly, and if it does make sense to correlate the information that way. As an engineer, I spotted a pattern in the lipid system that's very similar to distributed objects and networks. I've since learned to I've since learned quite a bit about the subject, both through research and experimentation, which has been revealed some which has revealed some powerful data. With this new general theory, I've shifted around my cholesterol more than anyone else in the world without any drugs, special supplements of any kind. Some of the highlights that he posted on his website, which is cholesterolcode.com, is in the first public presentation of my data, I arranged an experiment where I dropped my LDL-C by 73 and my LDL-P by 1,115 in just 3 days. In a recent experiment, I dropped my LDL-C by 104 in 7 days, from 207 to 103. I've had my LDL-C as high as 368. I've had my LDL-C as low as 98. To get a better overview of my research, see the videos that are linked, and they're all linked in his videos. His site has two primary purposes. It's a resource for those on a low-carb, high-fat, ketogenic diet who are interested in cholesterol, and a running blog on my research with regard to cholesterol. He said I can be reached either through the comment sections on this site or via Twitter at Dave Keto. He's got a YouTube video posted so you can watch one of his 45 minutes segments on the dynamic influence of high fat on cholesterol on a ketogenic based diet. There's some things that he talks about: hyper responders, people that respond to cholesterol and fat differently than others, which is a thing. I think I'm saying her name right, Sibian Huggins, works with Dave Feldman as the right-hand lipid research, and went keto in August of 2016. Lost 80 pounds and completely turned her health around. Now she spends her time diving into the inner workings of the lipid system and searching the mechanisms of the modern disease that it surrounds us. Her incredible research and insights have benefited our readers immensely with her Beyond the Lipid Hypothesis series and growing a list of additional articles. She can be reached via Twitter at SIOBHAN underscore Huggins, HUGGINS, or via email at SIOBHAN dot Huggins, HUGGINS, at gmail.com. Craig Moffat is a software engineer and amateur distance runner. He discovered low carb, high fat in an attempt to unlock ancestral superpowers, but now is an enthusiastic practitioner of LCL6 for health and brain power. He is a data guru behind the blog and has been tirelessly working to put together data to benefit the community that follows us. So basically, what you should take away from this is the experiments are 3 days. You know, you can go low fat for 3 days, and then you could have fat for 3 days, and then take a test, and it seems that your marker is going to be almost normal. But when you don't eat enough fat to satiate your appetite and actually benefit you, what ends up happening is your liver actually starts releasing VLDL as a stored fat fuel that ends up flooding the body because you're not getting enough fat, because you're basically starving yourself. And when you do a lot of these tests, that kind of stuff can affect you. That's why some of these tests are very inaccurate. That's why they still have certain fasting tests that shouldn't be in a fasted state. The military and the VA is starting to say that they don't even, a lot of the clinics have went away from fasting unless it's a specified medical procedure. So if I go in there for my cholesterol, my vitamin counts, my hormone or what my hormone function, stuff like that, they can see back far enough with no effect from eating before it. So a lot of them are starting to get away from fasting labs and just say, just show up and we'll test it, because we're seeing no difference, because your body shows a pattern of what it's been doing. So what Dave does is he goes through a series of low fat, tests himself, and then goes through 3 days of actually eating like 5,000 calories with tons of like 246 grams of fat in it. And because he's feeding his body so much fuel, the liver doesn't have a reason to release VLDL. So what ends up happening is your numbers are actually more normal. Your markers are more normal. So if you could go to cholesterolcode.com and check out his video and kind of see what he's talking about, you'll see the complete function of the liver. You'll look at cholesterol numbers, triglycerides, and stuff like that, and you'll see how they all function. It's not something that we actually understand. It's something that's much more complicated than that. And I actually talked tonight with Dave Feldman via message, and I had spoke to him about me. One of my biggest pet peeves is the abuse of keto coffees and fat bombs and stuff like that. And his exact words to me was like, why am I going to waste my time getting nutritional value from stuff like that when it doesn't benefit me? It's processed, it's refined, it's stuff that I don't want to put in my body. And this is one of the leading guys that understand cholesterol in the entire world. Like, he is one of the best ones that can portray a message and actually educate people. And that was his specific words to me. I mean, I have it via text where I can screenshot it, even post it here. And he kind of like, in a sense, agreed with me without agreeing with me. Why am I going to feed my body with refined, processed stuff like that when I'm not getting any nutritional value from it? So the takeaway here is, if you're worried about your markers and your numbers and stuff like that, and maybe you have the extra funds, or maybe your doctor will honor it and do it twice for you, go ahead and do your cholesterol numbers and stuff the way that your doctor recommends that you do it. And when they freak out because you're in a fasted state and your liver is like, oh my God, you're not eating, I have to now release free VLDL into your body, and it's going to flood your system, And when you go take your markers in the morning, when you take your test in the morning, it's not going to show accurate numbers at all. And I think that's the problem in the vegan community is vegan people think that ketogenic people eat all this fat and it's going to cause our markers to go way up. When actually science is showing that it's the exact opposite. When you eat the extra saturated fat, your body doesn't have a reason to release stored lipids. So if it doesn't have a reason to release stored lipids, your numbers actually stay down. The only time that your body really has high cholesterol spikes and such of that nature is if I'm not eating fat, if I'm not eating saturated fat, that's now they see it's very healthy for you. My body has to release VLDL from my liver. And when I release VLDL from my liver and it floods my system, this is when I start getting bad triglyceride numbers. This is when I start getting bad cholesterol numbers. This is when my body starts functioning like it's not supposed to function in a normal state. And that's when people start to freak out. So you'll see a lot of medical professionals now that talk about a low fat or a high fat, low carb diet will actually say, they don't really recommend being in a fasted state when you actually go get your test because it's a very inaccurate test. Your liver's naturally going to store VLDL. It's naturally going to store these lipids that are supposed to be released into the system in an emergency situation. And what ends up happening is the numbers actually increase abnormally. And you're tapping into a safety mechanism that shouldn't have to be tapped into. And then you're asking somebody to go test after it. Of course, you're not going to test properly. And then the whole mechanism of cholesterol. That was another portion of his segment. Dave Feldman is a very smart man and a very wise engineer when it comes to this. And his whole methodical process of how he relays and portrays his message is very, very understanding. He hits it from both topics, the geek side of things, and explains things very like term perfect. But then he also talks to normal people in more of a dumbed down version, I guess you could say, and makes you understand exactly what he's talking about. So if I was to tell you that LDL not only functions as a caking agent in the artery when an artery is inflamed and something has to be repaired, LDL has to carry cholesterol to that spot in order for it to plaque it. This is where plaquing comes in, and it plaques it. And then HDL comes behind it and swipes off the excess. So that cholesterol does its job. It repairs exactly what it's supposed to repair, inflammation. That's how it functions in the body, but that's not its only function. And I think this is where we need to start wrapping our mind around it. It also helps create hormones. It also gets dumped back in, partially recycled, partially not recycled, depending on where you get your information. Cholesterol is not just this bad thing that is supposed to clog your arteries. It doesn't work that way. You have in a lipid, you have many things. You can have cholesterol in there. You can have triglycerides in there. It all depends on how your body's functioning at that time, how this stuff gets released into your body. Are you in a stressful situation? Do you got into a fight the night before with your husband and he's sleeping on the couch and you're sleeping in the bed, and now you have all these hormones released in your body, but now you're supposed to be in a fasted state because you have labs to do in the morning, and then you're like, well, I mean, I would be thinking to myself, hormone release, I don't feel like eating, I'm in a fasted state, I'm all screwed up, I'm probably not going to do very good on my labs because my body is much smarter than a lab. It's much smarter than me or Dave Feldman, and it's probably going to release a bunch of stuff that it shouldn't have floating around, and my labs are going to come back abnormal. So that right off the bat, you can count it out. You're probably going to fail any kind of lab when it comes to that. Now there are people that are cheating the system. There are people out there that are on even plant-based diets, and what they'll do before they go get their cholesterol and stuff checked is like the day before, and I'm no stranger to this. I'm not stupid. I mean, I have a lot of plant-based friends that I actually communicate very well with, and they don't judge me because I'm keto. We just get along because that's their choice and this is my choice, and that's how it should be. They're still really great people, and I'm a really good person. They do it because they don't like animal products. Not because I'm doing anything wrong, not because it's a sentient being. It's simply because they don't want to eat animal products, and it's everybody's free will. They're kind of like more hippie-ish than anything like, yeah, man, it's cool, whatever, do your thing. I'm not a fan of it. That's how they are, which is awesome. Well, what they'll do before they take their tests, like the day before or 2 days before, is they'll actually start consuming like 2 or 3 tablespoons of coconut oil in the morning 2 in the afternoon, and then 2 at night, and all of a sudden you start getting this saturated fat released into the body, especially if it's not refined or processed. If you're getting like raw, organic coconut oil, that is going to be the best form of coconut oil you can possibly. But if you're getting that expeller pressed and stuff like I used to get, or you're getting the liquids and stuff like that, where stuff had to be chemically separated or electrically separated or ionized for the different parts of it to split, so you get MCT oils and stuff left over. Now you're talking about stuff being refined. It has to be taken out. It has to be put through a machine and stuff like that. It's not a very natural product. So that's why you see me so often say I don't really recommend a lot of MCT oil. I may use it from time to time because I feel like it does give me energy faster, but I definitely don't think it's the best thing out there. I think a raw, organic, unrefined coconut oil is probably the best form of MCTs you're going to get because it hasn't been put through anything to be separated. I don't care if it's been pressed or it's been air separated or whatever. I don't believe any of that. If I'm not there watching it, I just don't believe it anymore. So I try to take my health in my own hands at first. That's the most important thing is me. See, if I can't see it, I want something that's raw. I want something that's unrefined. I want something that's natural. I don't want something that's been separated and stuff with a machine or whatever. My point here is the vegan people that I know will start eating coconut oil the day before or maybe even 2 days before. So when they actually do go take their labs, their VLDL is down. Their free lipids that are floating throughout the body is down. Now you just have dietary fat that's in the system, and the body can process that very efficiently. So guess what? Cholesterol numbers come back normal. There's many ways to cheat the system, and a lot of people out there are smart. And they say, "Oh, look at my test. I got this test here, and it's perfect. See that LDL and that triglycerides and everything else? You can cheat the system. There's a way to cheat everything." The fact of the matter is, if you're not releasing VLDL from your liver, then you're not in an emergency situation. You're actually eating. So when we start doing this intermittent fasting and stuff like that, your body's still getting some kind of fuel. It's not only just from your fat; it's from your liver actually releasing fat as well. But it has to be replenished. In order for it to be replenished, it has to pull from your fat stores. So you're always going to have VLDL stored. Cholesterol is always going to be floating throughout your body somewhere. It doesn't matter if you're on a plant-based diet. It doesn't matter if you're on a ketogenic diet. It doesn't matter what kind of diet you're on. The culprit here is not fat and it's not protein. The culprit is carbohydrates and sugars. Refined, complex can even be dangerous if you do too much of it. It's just a matter of how your body processes things, how long you've done damage, and how metabolically destroyed you are. And how are you going to fix it? So put your life in your hands and do as much research as you possibly can, and look at cholesterolcode.com with David Feldman. If you do that, you'll find that you're going to be more empowered with information than you've ever been from watching somebody else. It's just amazing how he explains things. It's amazing how he gets a message across. It's amazing how he takes you through the studies that he's doing with inversion graphs, time frames, the amount of people. He's even got his own little group that he shared with me that I'm going to check out. And I don't think it's for everybody to be in. I think it's just people that he wants really, really serious about looking at like cholesterol. You don't have to participate, but you can be hungry for information as well. And I'll let you guys know how that goes. I just got in the group tonight, and I was kind of tired, so I was like, I don't want to put my effort into that right now because I'm really sleepy and stuff, and I just want to wake up in the morning fresh, have my black coffee without my liquid fats in it, and continue on about my day. And then I'll probably eat about noon, 1 o'clock. I'll have something pretty satiating. It'll be, something with that naturally has fat attached to it. I'm not big on adding bunches of fat to my food anymore. I try to make sure that I stay on more of the primal side, the more intuitive eating and stuff, and look at things more of I feel better that way. I feel better looking at my food and saying, I know I need this much fat, and I know if I have this many chicken breasts with the gristle and the thigh and the gristle and the skin and the nugget on the end of it with the marrow and everything like that. I know if I eat as much of that as I can and nothing goes to waste, I'm getting my nutrients from my food. I'm not having to add in tablespoons of butter and fat, which all that stuff is okay if that's your thing. But I'm seeing more and more and more people shifting, and Dr. Stanley Lang calls it the paradigm shift. He actually says that it's more of like spiritual health. Yeah, you have to want it. You have to want to change. It's spiritual health. It's knowing that your life should be number one. And a lot of the medical professionals and stuff out there that I see talking about this stuff that used to recommend the fat bombs and the bulletproof coffees and stuff like this, I can look at their pages and watch their videos, and some of their comments will come up. Oh, thanks for tuning in, guys. Do you got your keto treat with you? But then I'll go to another page where they're doing an the YouTuber, and they're completely against the same stuff they're asking people if they're eating, which sometimes makes no sense to me. Why would you promote it, but then turn around and say, "Well, yeah, it's not that great for people because people abuse it." I see this all the time. I see people change throughout the years. You can look back as far as you can. I have almost 300 videos on my YouTube. Never once have I ever been a real big fan. I've showed people how to make simple fat bombs, like 8 ounces of coconut oil and 8 ounces of peanut butter if you really desperately need it. And even stating that I don't really recommend it hardcore. But what do people do? They abuse it. They make a whole tray of it and it's gone within 24 hours. And then you have to look back at yourself and say, man, was that really worth it? Because I had a sweet tooth, and then I knew it was sitting there, and I know I'm not going to eat it for another few days, so I just finished off the whole entire tray. It's kind of one of those things where it can be good, but there are more bad than good, honestly, in my opinion. And that's why I just made that whole video yesterday about, are you keto? Ketosis, because there's a big difference. Anyway, that's my take tonight. Talking to Dave Feldman tonight was a really good opportunity to just be able to pick his mind and hear what he had to say, and just know that there's a lot of similarities in what we believe. And I'm just happy to have somebody like that in my corner, where if I can reach out to somebody, or if I need an answer for something, if somebody here has a question, I can message him and I can say, hey, what do you think about this? Let me pick your brain for a second, and then he'll talk to you just like a normal person. Anyhow, I'm gonna get off here. I appreciate the support. And again, if you guys haven't subscribed, please do. I talk about all kinds of controversial stuff that sometimes gets me in trouble and sometimes it don't. So hope you're in my corner and you're supporting me. All right, guys. Take care. Have a good night and keto on.